buckle up, Dragon Slayers and Adventure Seekers, for another thrilling episode of the Dangers and Dragons podcast. I'm Adrian, your host for this wild ride through the realms of storytelling. Each day, we bring you a fresh tale of epic quests, addictive stories, and legendary adventures, all told in a fun and captivating way to keep you coming back for more.
And I'm Julia, your resident geek expert, ready to dive into the nitty-gritty of today's story.
So today we're taking on a tale called Drifting Stars. Imagine this: a dying space station, a lone astronaut, and a dwindling oxygen supply. Just picture it, you're up there, alone, the silence from Earth is deafening, and the clock is ticking down. Talk about a fight for survival.
Right off the bat, you get that classic space thriller tension, but for me, what really stands out is the silence. It's not just the physical dangers, the failing systems, the lack of oxygen. It's that psychological weight of being completely cut off, forgotten.
It's like being buried alive, but you're floating in the vast emptiness of space. Our astronaut is scrambling, patching leaks, rerouting power, all while that oxygen counter ticks down like a doomsday clock. But yeah, you're right. The real danger is that silence.
It's that shift, from the external threat to the internal struggle. He goes from battling failing systems to this overwhelming sense of abandonment. And that human need for connection, for purpose, it becomes even more powerful when you're facing oblivion alone.
Absolutely. He's literally fighting for each breath while wrestling with the thought that his death will be meaningless. Just a blip on a radar that nobody's even watching.
Yeah.
He was a celebrated astronaut, a hero now.
Yeah.
He's just a liability left to suffocate.
Exactly. And it raises the question, what defines meaning in the face of death? Is survival enough? Or do we need acknowledgement, a shared experience, to truly matter?
He's spiraling, into this abyss of loneliness. And then something shifts. Amidst the silence, he picks up a faint signal, like a rhythmic pulse cutting through the static.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What is it? Some automated system coming back online. A distress beacon from another vessel.
Nope. It's music. An old Earth broadcast, faint and garbled like a ghost in the wires.
Wow, that's a punch to the gut. To go from the depths of despair to realizing that life on Earth is carrying on without him. It's like he's ripped from his reality and thrust into this parallel world where his struggle doesn't even register.
And not just carrying on, they're celebrating. He sees footage of his old crew, speeches about their mission, pop stars, election coverage. It's the mundane but vibrant tapestry of life, all happening light years away while he's fighting for every breath. Talk about a mind-blowing moment.
It's almost cruel, isn't it? He's risking his life while everyone else is celebrating his sacrifice without a second thought. It's not just about being forgotten. It's about the injustice of it all.
And you know what? He doesn't feel relief or joy at hearing from Earth. He feels anger, this burning primal fury.
Now, that's a fascinating reaction. It speaks to that deep-seated human need for validation, even in extreme circumstances. And when that validation is absent, well, it can lead to some pretty destructive actions.
He finds the source of the oxygen leak, a breach in the comms array. He could fix it, buy himself more time, maybe even call for help, but he doesn't.
Wait, he had what?
He decides to use his remaining time and oxygen to send a message back to Earth. Not a distress signal. Not a plea for rescue, something else entirely. He's going to make them remember him, but not the way they expect.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. What kind of message are we talking about? So he's faced with a choice, right? Cling to hope or make a statement. And he chooses the latter. I mean, that's a pretty drastic decision, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Instead of fixing that oxygen leak and trying to, survive, he focuses on making Earth hear him. Literally. And the way he does it, sending that love song back as his final message, it's heartbreaking, but it's also defiant.
It definitely flips the script on like the typical survival narrative. You expect the hero to exhaust every option, cling to life. But this astronaut, he's driven by something else entirely.
Anger.
Yeah.
He feels betrayed by the very people he was supposed to be a hero to, and his choice. It reflects that. It's like he's saying, fine, you forgot about me. I'll make sure you never forget this.
But he doesn't choose a message of hate or despair, right?
Yeah.
He chooses a love song, something that's supposed to evoke connection, tenderness. But in this context, it takes on a whole new meaning.
Exactly. It becomes this eerie, unsettling presence. Imagine people on Earth just going about their day when suddenly this melancholic love song cuts through their regular broadcast. It would be chilling.
They'd try to trace the signal, analyze it, and the more they dig, the more they realize the truth, right? It's the ghost of a forgotten mission, a man they left to die, reaching out from beyond the grave.
And It's not just a reminder of his deaths, is it? It's a reminder of their neglect. It's a legacy that will linger, a shadow cast over their celebrations. He might not have gotten the rescue he deserved, but he's made sure they'll remember his name.
It makes you question what it truly means to be remembered, doesn't it? Is a statue or a speech enough? Or is there a deeper responsibility we owe to those we send out into the unknown?
And that brings us to the big question the story leaves us with. Was the astronaut's choice justified? Was this the right thing to do?
It's a brilliant ending because it doesn't offer easy answers, right? It forces you to grapple with the complexity of his situation, the emotional weight of his decision. Do we condemn him for choosing a symbolic act over survival? Or do we empathize with his need to be heard, even if it's in this, unconventional, haunting way?
It challenges our perceptions of heroism, that's for sure. You typically associate it with selflessness, with sacrifice. But what happens when that sacrifice is ignored, forgotten? Does heroism then become about reclaiming your narrative, even if it means embracing anger and resentment?
And what about the people on Earth? How do they grapple with this message from beyond the grave? Do they see it as an act of revenge? Or do they recognize the pain and loneliness that fueled it?
It forces them to confront their own complacency, their willingness to forget those they deem inconvenient. And that's the power of a story like this, right? It stays with you long after you finish reading it.
It makes you think about the stories we tell, the ones we choose to forget, and the cost of that forgetting.
And it reminds us that even in the vastness of space, the most compelling stories are often about human connection, about the need to be seen, to matter. And sometimes those stories, they leave behind a haunting echo.
So we've been unpacking this really intense story, about this forgotten astronaut, his haunting message, and all those questions it raises about memory and sacrifice and what it means to be a hero. What are your final thoughts?
Well, it's definitely a powerful story, that's for sure. It sticks with you. I mean, you can't help but admire the astronaut's audacity, right?
Yeah.
He just refuses to fade away quietly. He turns his isolation, his abandonment into a weapon. Yeah, he could have tried to survive, maybe hope for a late rescue. But instead, he chooses to make Earth confront its neglect. He takes control of his narrative in, well, the most unconventional way imaginable.
Exactly. It makes you think, what is true heroism? Is it always about self-sacrifice, even when that sacrifice is ignored? Or can it be about reclaiming your story, your voice, even if it comes at a cost?
There's a real tragedy to it, though. The anger, the need for revenge, it consumes him, doesn't it? He becomes so fixated on making Earth remember him that he loses sight of any other possibilities.
This story really underscores the importance of connection, of communication. Just imagine if Earth had maintained contact, hadn't forgotten about him. I mean, the ending might have been entirely different.
True, but then maybe it wouldn't have been such a thought-provoking, haunting tale. Drifting Stars really reminds us that darkness and isolation, they can give birth to powerful stories. Stories that force us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our choices.
So, for all you dragon slayers and adventure seekers out there, what do you think? Was the astronaut's final act justified? How do we balance that need for recognition with the responsibility to those who sacrifice for the greater good?
Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. Share your theories, your outrage, whatever comes to mind. You can find us on all the usual social media platforms. And hey, don't forget to rate and follow the Dangers and Dragons podcast. We've got more epic quests, crazy tales, and legendary adventures coming your way, all with those unexpected twists and turns, of course.
We'll be back soon with another story to take you to the edge of your seat and leave you pondering the mysteries of the universe. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those imaginations firing.
See you in the next adventure.